All right, honey, here we go. We are, if you can believe it, on podcast 6 today. And I'm so excited to bring this information to people, part of what we've experienced in our own lives. And the big picture of this podcast today is that God wastes nothing.
Nothing is wasted is actually the title. So
I changed it.
I know, Cherise, every time I start to write something up, you change it.
I just made it a little bit better.
Yes, you did.
Because we have to define who actually makes something out of our waste.
That sounds great. I think before we get started, we wanted to talk about what our podcast show is really about. And the reason we have this unique platform, it's not just two people giving opinions. It's about the fact that you and I have dealt with pain for 27 years. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, pain is a universal language among those who suffer.
Actually, I didn't deal with pain until I met you. So I've got 24 years.
You have.
You've got 27 on this.
I have 27 years. And it's as though we're fluent in the language of pain and understanding a lot of the idiosyncrasies that happen with pain. Mm-hmm. And we have a unique platform because it's not just having the length of time of 27 years. It's the fact that I used to be a healthcare practitioner, a doctor of chiropractic, mm-hmm. and then I became a patient. It's the fact that we've been married and you're a spouse who has some very interesting takes about chronic pain over the length of our marriage. We've dealt with the role reversals.
Yes.
We've dealt with role reversals, not just with work, but as well as with parenting. We've also seen great things happen in our marriage, like transformational weight loss. We've dealt with blended family issues. We've been at the bottom in our marriage at times when we first got started, and we've risen to the top. And that's not because we've done it. We've had a Holy Spirit give us the power and the insight and the strength and has poured love into our marriage. Mm-hmm. We've learned how to create in the sense of having a new identity and new purpose. We've moved into those seasons of significance. We've dealt with a lot of different things. I don't care if it's something as small, which is large to many people, as resources, finances, time management, episodes of depression, despair, despondency with chronic pain. Mm-hmm. We've dealt with these things for several years, and we want to share our message with other people.
Well, it's an invitation to come on the journey with us because we haven't figured it out. But we are on a journey and we're building something new out of the old. And we want people to just come alongside of us and glean from the experience because, you know, some people are in their very beginning stages of maybe experiencing some chronic pain condition that they never expected. It came out of left field in their life. They've never felt it before. They don't know what to do. They're just trying to get gravity right now. And really, there's nowhere to touch on the same floor that they were on before. And I've met a few people even this week, just surprise encounters with people that I never expected to meet this week that I've known just from my sphere of real estate or working. And chronic pain has been a subject with two people. And one of them, it's more recent pain that they're dealing with. And one of the thoughts that came to mind this week was the thought of, you know, as they're dealing with these pain conditions, waste. Like, my life is going to be wasted, or I've wasted my life.
Right.
And I think that because of the unique experience that you have from doctor to patient, and 27 years so far of working through these conditions, there is so much to glean about what happens when you perceive that life has been wasted. Is it really wasted?
It absolutely feels that way. Mm-hmm. And I think more surprising, we're not supposed to be surprised by fiery, difficult trials or challenges that we face in life. There are a lot of hardships with life, but it's almost as if you slip into something and you can't even imagine that you're actually living out a life of chronic pain. Mm-hmm. You may have severe pain and anguish And then all of a sudden you're thinking, I'm going to get better. I'll eventually get better. Maybe it'll take 6 months to get better. And then year after year piles up, and you find yourself in a point where you say, the reality is you're not getting better. Mm-hmm. You're developing almost an onion peel of additional pain syndromes. It's harder to walk through life. You're slower. You're weaker. You hurt more. Productivity, the things that you could have done before, now you can't even imagine doing them anymore. In fact, as the years move forward, you get to a point of realizing, I don't even remember what pain-free living looks like anymore.
Right.
I know that I'm at that stage at 27 years.
So it's so easy at that point, I think, and just observing what you've gone through and even being the spouse of one who walks through the pain, to say that we're heaping up the biggest pile of regrets that we could ever have because we can't do it the way we want to do it. We have to do it a different way. And so the pain can lead to things like regret, where you just look at life and it's a desolate wasteland. It just feels parched, that there's nothing there anymore. And it's not true, but it feels like that. And when all of those heaping piles of waste happen, I think of it in terms of, I was reading a devotional, and I really love this woman. I forgot her name, but she talks about gardening, and she's an expert gardener. And I absolutely love what she was talking about as far as compost, because, you know, when people have their waste and they turn that compost into the soil, when they put it on the soil, it seems like you're just heaping piles of waste on barren soil, right? But I think the really interesting thing about that is that when compost is laid down on soil, it can actually yield some of the best plants that it could ever have, because it takes all those things that are seeming waste. They could have just been trashed and thrown away, but really the soil takes it in and it makes a stronger and more resilient plant than it could have been before. And I see that working its daily life out in the story of our lives and in the story of your life.
Absolutely. And for the audience, this is one thing that I've learned over the years, is that the church focuses with a greater emphasis on stewardship rather than how do you walk nobly through chronic pain.
We'll explain that a little bit more fully.
Well, we hear the stewardship message all the time. Mm-hmm. It's don't let your fear lead you into any feelings of wastefulness or always feeling some type of loss. And we see stewardship out of the 5 loaves and 2 fish, where eventually that amount of food also fed 5,000 men and women and children. And Jesus broke the loaves, gave them first to the disciples, and the disciples gave those loaves to the crowds. And obviously all of the food was blessed prior to the actual breaking of something. And finally, after they got done eating, they picked up broken pieces, and there was an equivalent to about 12 full baskets of bread that was still left over. And we hear, if we can just go ahead and not waste any of God's resources. Well, a lot of times when you're undergoing pain, it feels like as you're dying to yourself that you're wasting the best parts of who you are.
Wow.
And you're wasting the productive parts. And so we focus always on supernatural abundance, which is extremely important for prosperity and provision and stewardship. And I am not diminishing those particular spiritual laws for people's lives. But there's another emphasis to look at, and that is sometimes waste makes us wait for the Lord first.
That's so good.
Before we take action. And that waiting may take years. And I think one applicable story that you and I have gone through just in the last 10 years has dealt with Destin, Florida. And we had a townhome that we purchased, and we had an interior designer who was extremely prophetic. She challenged me in many ways. She challenged my perspectives about Christianity. And it's not that I haven't been around prophetic people. I have. It's that the way she spoke prophecy into my life, I just felt like sometimes I'm more mental, intellectual. I'm looking at the scholarship of the word.
You're more mental.
I am more.
You just said it.
I am more mental. Anyway, this was in February. You and I had taken a trip to Destin, and we were really being pulled with our lives. And I was out on the beach, and I'd literally cried to God, God, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to move to Destin? Do you want us to stay in Colorado Springs? We have such a good real estate business, but we want to do what you would have us to do. What do we do right now? And I was crying. And 20 minutes later, we got a call from this prophetic woman who we loved to death. And she called me and said, Gordon, God has a word for your prayers. And she did not even know I was in Destin. And that word was Isaiah 22:22. Whatever doors God opens, man can't shut. And whatever doors God shuts, man can't open. And then I began to argue with her about the keys and the government and the shoulder of Christ.
Okay, you're going mental again.
I'm going mental again. And she said, Gordon, this is a prophecy. I see doors right now for your life. And you have a chance to walk through some doors. And it's going to happen on 02/22. Well, I didn't even focus on the numbers, but 3 days later, we were out eating dinner. And as we were eating dinner, we met some new friends, and one of them was a lady who was sitting in front of us across the table, and she happened to have a Pilates studio. And it was about 9 o'clock at night in Destin, and we had nothing else to do. And she said, listen, my Pilates studio is practically across the street. Would you like to come see it?
Yeah.
So as we walked through the doors, and this was on February 22nd, 02/22, as we walked through the doors, I saw a gyrotonics table, Pilates tables, but I could see myself working with people on chiropractic tables. And then I could see myself working with people on Pilates tables. So God was using that time to show that there was no waste from my previous skills as a practitioner.
And so many years later.
So many years later.
So many years. So many dormant years where it feels like nothing is happening. And, let's get real. This whole thing about something new emerging as far as doors opening, the big thing about that for me was the fact that I had been praying for a few years specifically about your health, and the fact that even though you literally had walked your faith out, you were down to a very good weight, and you were sustaining your weight, you had no strength. And so,
thank you, honey. That's a compliment to me.
You're welcome.
Men don't like to hear that, but
but the truth is, you had a 5-pound lifting ratio, and that's been drilled into my mind since the very beginning of our marriage. And so, for you to walk into a Pilates studio and to look at that equipment and to see that you could actually potentially work through the resistance of the fact that you can't lift, but you might be able to gain strength. It was pretty overwhelming. In fact, it was so overwhelming, I'm pretty sure that the friends that were with us that night, because you were there for so many hours, didn't we just lay down? We were almost taking naps. I was like, he is already fully into this.
And the instructor, who probably the best instructor I had at the time, she mentioned that I connected with the anatomy and physiology with what's happening. So we did, as we walked through the doors and saw this vision, I ended up working out for 3 hours, very lightly, gently, and everything else. And when we went home, we were scheduled to return to Colorado Springs that next day. I asked if I could stay for another week and give it a shot to see if I would have an exacerbation of pain and to learn more about Pilates. And that's what we did.
Yes.
And so I stayed 5 more days. And we met more people who were encouraging.
I wasn't there. There was no we.
I know.
You were there working out every day.
Every day. And I met some new folks at dinner and things like that. And our family was encouraged. And then I ended up getting certified in Pilates and then teaching rehab type Pilates. Mm-hmm. And the studio filled up so fast it wasn't even funny. So we had a great community. It was also a community of encouragement and inspiration and me understanding the body and its limitations as well as how it operates. I could help people.
And speaking of limitations, you were fighting through a lot of pain through that whole time.
Absolutely.
Because I'm the one that got to witness you waking up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning and your body, neurologically, it was just firing off pain everywhere. And you were determined to get into that studio, and you made it a community that it's very hard to come by the community that was built in that Pilates studio. That was a blast. In fact, I was a bit jealous because it was next door to my real estate office. And all I could hear is just roaring laughter as people were working out hard. And, I was working real estate, which sometimes doesn't create all the laughter that the Pilates studio did. And you are so alive even through your pain. And I think the biggest part of that was it started these seeds to say, Gordon, God was saying this to you. Everything that you have in you, I'm making it new again. And nothing is wasted about your past, about your experience, about being a doctor. I'm transferring that in a new way, in Absolutely. A way that you could not have created on your own. And all of the years of pain, all of the tears that you've sowed, all of the times where you feel misunderstood, all of the times where you couldn't lift things and you felt ashamed. And that's true. I hated that for you because you're inside, you're the strongest man I know, but the outside of you has been raging and raging. And I'm just overwhelmed at how Pilates was something that really it was one illustration, only one of the many layers of how God has been restoring the things that seemed wasted. And, with that, can I just change the lens a little bit?
I understand that I'm keeping a muzzle right now on my mouth.
Well, you've done a good job of speaking, but I think I have some notes that add a lot of depth to this story.
Okay.
And not really your story, but let's look at God's story.
Absolutely.
And changing the lens a little bit on waste. Because when I was kind of blown away by this, actually, as I'm researching this topic and thinking about waste specifically, I really did want to identify with how God sees waste. And the first place I went was in Genesis 1:2. And it talks about the fact that at that point, the earth was a formless void or a waste and emptiness, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So the earth was a waste. And it talks about that a primeval ocean that covered the unformed earth was there. So basically, the earth was covered with water at that point in Genesis. So there was nothing there. There was no land to see. Everything was covered with water. And it specifically uses in the Amplified Bible the word waste. So I'm a little bit overwhelmed because I'm thinking of the Spirit of God hovering over the earth, looking over this, not even seeing land. Now, if I were God at that point, I probably would say, this sucks. I have a whole universe out there. I can go somewhere else and do something. There's nothing I can do with this land. There's nothing to create here. God doesn't see it that way. He saw this void. He saw this waste. He saw that it was covered with water, and he saw a canvas which he could create all of creation. That is what astounds me about the fact that God doesn't see waste the way that we do. And it's so encouraging. There is nothing that can happen where God doesn't make that waste into something beautiful. But the point is, it's being connected to the one, to the Spirit of God who does make something new, who does create something. And I think to try to just muster up the strength on our own, I mean, if you tried to muster it up on your own, honey, you would have been sunk a long time ago.
That's true.
And I'm overwhelmed because you did interact with God. The Spirit of God was moving in you to work through those things, to make all things new inside of you.
And there's a willingness on our part. There's a willingness to say, my will does not supersede God's will.
Yeah.
I'm going to be humble enough to walk in change. And then when you're in chronic pain, and I'm sure a lot of the audience members can get this, you're on your last breath. You've had very little hope. And so when you hear of waste, maybe that topic, it does bring regrets. But you also don't have to do something self-destructive, such as you don't have to blow up the little part of your life that you have left. Mm-hmm. You don't have to blow it up into smithereens to test God.
That's right.
Are you going to take care of the waste products that I have? Okay, God, I'm giving you the worst of my scrap. And how are we going to make this new? Okay, God, I want you to prove that you're God. He doesn't do that. Mm-mm. And he takes the things that we think might be scrap anyway, and he reforms us. So I've written down a few different things. What can we not do? We cannot change our old behaviors or addictions by doing our former habits, the things that we used to do. That moves us into waste. That moves us into...
whether they're good or bad habits.
Correct.
I mean, you have to learn new habits, right?
Correct. That doesn't move us forward. That keeps us stuck in sinking sand. Mm-hmm. We have to learn new things. We have to take with what we have. It may be our pain. It may be diminished circumstances. It may be that we are stuck in mud, but we have to take those things and learn new things. And the new things that we learn, we have to implement into new habits. Whatever those habits are, and we've talked about starting small, which leads to gigantic changes. We have to dive deeper, number 4, into discovering some of the hidden parts of our identity and our purpose. We have a divine power of God within us, and we're being questioned at that time. Do we fully believe? Do we fully believe in God? Do we fully believe that he's with us and in us? Do we fully believe that he's working on our behalf, even though we feel like we have nothing left? Okay? Because when we're losing hope, we don't even ask anymore. We feel like that we've got too much shame associated with our pain. So I love the verse in John 14. Whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. And I encourage every audience member right now who's suffering, who feels like they're part of the wasteland, who feels like darkness is over them more than anything else, start asking in the name of Jesus. Start asking for something new.
Yep.
Be willing to submit to that. Be willing to walk forward with that reality. You can also use scrap from your former life to build a new life. It's the epitome of reconstruction and redemption. That's what God does with us. Even though sin has been inhabited within our body, God says it doesn't matter because of the cross. We're going to help with the fact of redemption. You're going to be made new. Mm-hmm. So those are the things, those are the thoughts, those are the verses that helped me and our family. And you took a great leadership charge in this to say, we're not going to stay stuck. Mm-hmm. And it was those type of thoughts that moved us even into a Pilates studio and owning our own Pilates studio. And combining that with real estate, we realized that there's still some precious parts of who we are that can be used later, and we can grow into new things.
And that was a great time in our lives. We no longer have the Pilates studio, but we still have the community of people that we love, that we're a part of that. And really, some of the greater lessons that you were even speaking about in the studio, we're taking it to the world. We're taking it through this podcast. We're taking it into another level again, so that it's a reminder that even the testimony of our lives are not wasted. We're supposed to overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
That's very good. And on our last podcast, we talked about the heart. And what redemption does, it's an effective way to make peace with our heart. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, we're also making peace with our pain. And it's some of the initial steps of forgiveness, and not
Don't go sadistic on me.
No, we're not apportioning blame or percentages or causation factors to pain. We have to get over that. We have to move forward saying, if we keep doing that, we stay within that spirit of impoverishment. We stay within that thinking of loss and waste and regret. Mm-hmm. We have to move forward, seeing the new things and developing the new habits. That's what breaks the old addictions.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So some other verses which are helpful when you're going through that, and you say, gosh, that sounds easy, Gordon and Cherise. It's not easy. And you have to remember some things. For instance, the tongue, or the words that come off your tongue, the tongue of the wise brings healing. Now, we know that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but the desire fulfilled is a tree of life.
We've talked about this before.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And whatever you do in word and deed, do all in the name of Jesus, giving thanks to him, to God the Father. So there's an attitude of thanksgiving that when you have that, you will experience supernatural abundance in the way that you walk out your pain. That is living abundantly through your chronic pain.
I've seen you just practically saying that, because it can sound so out there. Just be thankful. I've seen you celebrate and have Thanksgiving through your pain, thanking God for the smallest things in your life. Like, thank you that I can get out of bed today. Thank you that I can put on my shoes. Thank you that I can get up and brush my teeth. Thank you that I can have my kids next to me. Thank you that, you've definitely taken the things that are not waste, and you've thanked God for them, and you've trusted God to take the things that feel wasted to make even more out of those things.
I'm grateful for the gifts that we have.
Yeah.
It is sitting at the breakfast table with you saying, thank you that we can have coffee together.
Yeah.
Thank you that we have a fireplace that works. Thank you that we have clothes on our back. Thank you that we have a view of the Colorado mountains. Mm-hmm. Thank you that we can see the ocean. Those things show the epitome. It opens the doorways to see who God is. And it brings power to your life. Now, I have a question for you. What's your thought of the day?
Remember that God is not wasting your pain. He's not wasting it. He's going to make something beautiful out of your pain. And in the very place of your pain is where your life is going to be rebuilt.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
How about you?
I'm still on view and vision from our podcast. The view of our work transforms our attitudes. When you look upwards, it will empower the inside of who you are, and you can utilize even the smallest parts of who you are for greater things. Nothing is wasted. Absolutely nothing.
That's good.
So,
hey, we're done with podcast 6, and this has been a very good one. We're going to lead into the next one, and I do think we go from waste to roots. So in the next podcast, we're going to talk about roots, and there's a lot to say about that. So this has been a very important discussion. And I hope it encourages a lot of people. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.